everyone, and welcome back to Deep Waves Transformation. Today's guest brings both lived experience and professional insight to the world of mental health. Jamie Hughes is a social psychologist, life coach, and author of the Managing Mental Health series, covering essential topics like anxiety, depression, PTSD, and adult ADHD. His work is deeply rooted in a passion for trauma recovery, resilience, and the power of self-care. Jamie's approach to healing is both practical and holistic, shaped by his own powerful journey through trauma, abuse, and depression. Rather than let the pain define him, he transformed it into purpose, helping others reclaim their mental and emotional well-being through evidence-based strategies and compassionate guidance. Jamie, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So, Jamie, your work in mental health is clearly driven by passion and purpose. Can you share a bit about your personal journey and what led you to this field?
Oh, sure. Yeah, my personal journey started, like many others when I was a child. My parents got divorced when I was still a baby, so I never even knew I had a dad. I didn't never saw pictures, never heard a name, anything. And it was just me and my mom up until I was 8 years old, and she passed away suddenly
Oh,
from
wow,
a
sorry.
chronic liver disease. So the trauma, and those terms hit very early on. And at that point, my grandparents wanted to adopt me, but family court judge, in his wisdom, decided that if my father was still alive, I should go live with him. And so I
Right.
was made to go live with him. So within a month of my mother passing away, I was thrust into a new town, a new school, a new family, new everything. And
Wow.
I never ever had the chance to really grieve. And it was actually kind of forbidden. My dad was emotionally and psychologically abusive my entire life after that point. So he would actually stop me and threaten punishment if I was grieving, if I was crying, or even
Show
saying
emotion.
anything about my mom. Right. So yeah, it was, quite the traumatic upbringing, and suffered with depression from the age of 9. The grief kind of rolled into that, and the other symptoms that come along with clinical depression soon followed, leading up to a suicide attempt when I was 18. That was the first time I'd ever had any introduction, any dealings with mental health professionals. And even then, I wasn't ready, and it was probably in my mid 20s before I started intentionally going down a healing path. Going to therapy, getting help. So that's all of that. That's a lot to unpack, but that's kind of
Yeah.
my personal
Wow.
journey and what led me into the field of psychology. I originally went in, started my bachelor's degree with sort of the idea of, what, I want to learn more about this, learn more about myself,
So
and
curiosity
just,
kind of kicked in.
yes, yes.
You feel
And
like you had that one day where you just fully surrendered and you're like, okay, I
I
got
don't
to
know.
do something about
Yeah,
it.
it's kind of a, you know, uh, kind of a growth process, I guess. And so that was sort of the step one. And it really was while taking classes that it sort of dawned on me like, I, I'm getting a lot out of this, that I understand more about myself. And I think I want to not only apply it to myself, but I would like to help other people as well with this information.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And thank you so much for doing that, Jamie. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm so happy that you are still here today and that
Thank you.
that suicide attempt did not go through. There's a
Yes. Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Very happy
reason.
now. Very happy that that didn't work out.
See, there you go. So
Uh-huh.
then what are some of the biggest misconceptions in your opinion that people still have today about mental health, especially when it comes to conditions like PTSD or ADHD?
Oh, the biggest, if you don't have it, then you think it's a choice. People still think, I mean, today, even with me personally, even people that have known me for like decades, I will
Uh-huh.
still catch them saying little things like, "Oh, well, you just need to think more positive thoughts." You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's to me that's the biggest misconception is that people just think it's a choice that you're choosing to live with certain thoughts and certain feelings, and that you should just be able to just flip a light switch and turn it off.
Right. So then what would you say to those people that treat you like that?
Um, and I say this, in sincere, you know, compassion and love for people. Some people are very genuine and want to help and want to care. They just don't know how, they don't know what it's like. Um, that would be no different than me. I don't know, helping someone, trying to help someone that was a paraplegic. I haven't been in that position, so I would think I know. I think, oh, this person needs X, Y, and Z, but that may not be what they really need. So
Right.
my advice is always just take your time and let your compassion for your loved one or friends or coworker, whatever, let that include learning, learning and listening.
Very
Learn
good.
as much as
Very
you can about the condition, if it's clinical depression, if it's grief, if it's PTSD, ADHD, whatever. Learn as much as you can. The more you know, the more you will understand what that person's going through. And
exactly.
being compassionate involves listening, and it's a skill we can all learn. And it's sometimes tough because,
Yeah.
you know, our natural communication is we're 50% listening, 50% responding, you know.
Right.
And when it comes to someone that's going through a hard time, whatever that is, whether it's something current, whether it's a condition, a disorder, you have to be, 99% listening.
You have to be. So in that case, how do you personally, how did you build your circle of people? Or do you have a circle of people
Oh,
that you
yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely have a circle of people.
where did
That's
you go and search for them? Because I know people
man,
are sitting there like, well, where do I go to find these people? How do I get out of these toxic situations? Where do I go to find these people?
yes. And that can be really tough. When you're talking about struggling with a mental illness, you have all kinds of negative perceptions about yourself and about the world around you that can be part of your condition. Let's say PTSD. You tend to be hypervigilant. You may think every single person you meet has something against you. Maybe they want to
Absolutely
harm
right.
you. You know, um, I worked in the domestic violence and sexual assault field for many years, and
Oh, thank you
especially
so much for that. I am a huge
yes,
advocate. I don't know if you just saw my video about the protest that I held in Salt Lake City, Utah for that.
yes, that's very
Yeah.
commendable
So
and
thank
very
you for
needed.
that.
It's still it's still one of those topics that people just don't understand sometimes. But
Sure.
I,
Let's talk
I,
about it.
I've yeah, I've worked with survivors of both of domestic violence and sexual assault, and it affects your relationships going forward. Because even if you start to heal from what you already experienced, there's that little voice deep down inside that says, wait a minute, I need to be on guard all the time. I need to be on guard from this person. I don't really know this person. You know, the last person I trusted did X, Y, and Z. So how do so there's this inner dialogue going on, and it's subconscious, it's, you can, you can work on it. Absolutely. But it can be subconscious to where you don't realize it, that it's affecting your relationships going forward. So it's just picking the right circle. One comes with a lot of self healing, because those negative self perceptions of yourself and the world around you, you have to heal from some of that before you can clearly see what's toxic and what's not. Because if you're still in the middle of the pain, if you're still in the middle of a mental health issue that you haven't been treated for, you don't have a clear perception. You just don't. And so it's so easy to go into those relationships, whether it be family, whether it be romantic, or whether it be friendships. And you may accept stuff that is not healthy, just because you don't have a clear understanding of yourself. You don't have a clear understanding of boundaries. Um, so self-healing is the first step. The second step is look at the people that have always been there. And that, and I mean people that it's not just that they understand, because again, if I have a family member and they don't have what I have, then they don't understand.
Mhm.
I've got to get to a point of, I have to understand that they don't understand. So I may
Exactly.
need to teach them, hey,
Yes.
I know you offered to do such and such, but that's just, I really just don't need that. I want your, I want your care. I want your company, but here's a, here's something I really do need. So we have to learn to communicate. Both sides of the fence have to learn to communicate. But look at the people that have been there long term, long term. And the more you grow, the more you heal, the easier it is to see that. Um, and the third, I would say, is just absolutely learn yourself and learn as much as you can about healthy communication and relationships. I, there's a whole, uh, this would, definitely chase some rabbits, but down the rabbit hole, but there's the whole attachment theory. So
Yeah.
attachment theory says the way that you were raised as a very young child, baby to infant to toddler, that the way that your mother or main caregiver showed you affection or lack thereof grows into an attachment style as you get older and you go into relationships. And again, this is all just sort of, it's there until you learn about it and start healing from it. But you could be extremely avoidant. You could be extremely anxious in an attachment style. And you have to learn, you have to be a student of yourself and learn that about yourself and say, oh, okay, I see, I tend to do this, this, and this, and I tend to feel this, this, and this. Here's where I'm at. Let
Right.
me learn how to move towards secure, even if it's one little thing at a time. And so it's a lot, but it's things, these are practical steps that anybody can start working on. And even if you fix 10%, even if you grow or learn 10%, you're you're going to be better in these aspects of finding your circle of people that
Yeah.
you can truly count on.
Yeah. So then do you think it's possible, in your opinion, that we can grow in love? How soon do you think we should take time for ourselves before we enter into a new relationship coming out of abusive situations?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. It's going to vary by individual. I know that's the catchphrase of all, you know, all self help and all anything else, but it's true.
Yeah.
It depends on how much work you've done in the past. Is this the first time you've experienced this? If it's not, if it's maybe the second or third, you've probably picked up some pieces along the way that you just need to refocus on and say, okay, look, I've grown in this area. I can look back and see where I did better this time at this. So, what else do I need to learn? Really pinpoint on what you need to learn. And instead of focusing on time, focus on that. Focus on what is it I want and need to learn. You know, you and I could sit down together in a class, in a physics class, and I don't know you personally at all. So this isn't an insult. The teacher could speak for an hour and I might pick up 90% of what he says without reading the book, without taking notes, anything. And you might be like, yeah, I got half of that. I need to read the book. That's how I learn.
I
So
love that.
it can be just totally different learning styles in terms of how much time it takes. But if you're focused on what you need to learn and just work on that, you'll get there no matter how much time it takes. There's a really good German parable that goes with this. It
Okay.
says, don't chase butterflies because they will just fly away. Instead, concentrate on building a beautiful garden. Then the butterflies will come. But even if they don't, now you have a beautiful garden.
Oh, I love that.
So
Thanks for sharing.
instead of the time, don't beat yourself up thinking of time. Think of what is it I need to work on for myself, and just focus on that. And you'll feel it. You'll feel it when you get to that point of like, you know what? And the key, one of the keys, I think, is when you get to a point where one day you go, huh, I feel at peace. I feel at peace being by myself. I
That is
feel it.
so true.
I feel at peace doing activities that I like. I feel at peace saying no. I feel at peace that I don't feel like I have to chase something. That's when you know
That is
that,
so true.
okay, now I'm ready to kind of dip my toes back in the water.
You guys, Jamie just hit that on the head. Like, seriously. Wow. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for that insight. So then, can you explain the difference between coping and healing and how someone can move from just surviving to
Mm.
truly thriving?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, coping, we tend to think of something you're doing in the immediate moment to um, to lessen the effect of something that's hitting you, that's coming up right then. So, for instance, if you have anxiety, PTSD, any of those things, you may have social anxiety, and you all of a sudden you feel it in your body. It's happening. You may not even know what triggered it, but you can just feel it. It's almost like feeling on fire. Your skin almost
Mhm.
feels like on fire, and it's
You're
like,
crawling. Hmm.
yes, and like,
And shaking, like
yes,
trembling
you can get
inside. Yeah.
shakes. It can feel like you're in a funnel. Some people get this funnel
Yep.
like where the
Tunnel
sound
vision,
just kind
funnel.
of,
Yep.
yeah, it's weird.
Hmm.
So a coping mechanism is the block breathing block breathing technique, where you just, once you catch it, or as soon as you realize, okay, this is coming up, you do a 4 count breathe in, hold your breath for 4, breathe out for 4, hold your breath for 4, and repeat. That stabilizes your nervous system, and it kind of brings you down off the edge. That's a
Now
coping.
let's teach the audience where to actually breathe from, because I know there are different breathing techniques.
Yes.
And I've learned a lot. So we're breathing from our shoulders, our gut, or our heart space, or our back, or our shoulders.
So in
What do
this
we do?
one, you're breathing from your stomach, your solar plexus, and you're breathing in your nose in 4 count, and then you stop. So you're not technically holding your breath. You just stop and pause
Slow.
for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you breathe out with a heavy push through your mouth, 4 counts. And you can feel it in your stomach, right below your lungs. So the bottom of your chest is where you're kind of pushing out. And then you pause again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you repeat. And the goal is to slow down your breathing. And it's kind of a trick on your mind. So your mind's already in this, survival mode reaction.
Yeah,
So
fight or
you're
flight.
making it focus on two other things: the counting and the breathing. So it tricks your mind. And in the breathing part, like I said, it's bringing your nervous system back into a balance, because that's what's happening. It's not just in your mind. You're not just thinking something wild. Your nervous system is actually triggered, and that's where
Yep.
that's coming from. So that's what you're doing. So
You're
that's
no longer at homeostasis, and we've got to get you back there.
right, exactly. Now, and it's probably not going to take everything away, but it should get you to a point. Okay, all right, I can deal with this. If I need to leave this environment, let me do that now. If I need to just sit down and take a break, if I need to go outside, get some fresh, it kind of gives you a little stability to do something else. Um, Other coping mechanisms could be like for PTSD, there's one that's called a 5 count, uh, and you use your 5 senses, and
Yeah.
all of them that you can physically do, you do. But if you can't physically do it, you just think about it. But it's kind of the same thing. You're sort of up here emotionally or mentally, and what you're doing is you're doing using something to bring your nervous system back down, back to balance.
Right, which is called grounding. So, like, say you're in
Yes.
a high, really panic, manic state,
Uh-huh.
you do tap into those five senses. Go touch a different textured wall, or
Yes.
um, spray your sacred spray all
Smell
over you to
something.
get
Yes.
grounded again.
Yes.
Or
I,
go and taste something.
yeah.
Yes, really tap
Yeah.
into those senses to be like, okay, I'm grounded, I'm safe, I can do this.
I
Yep.
use I use coffee as my go-to. I'm
That's a
coffeeholic,
great
but
one. Yeah, there you go.
in the morning I do meditation every morning. So I get up, fix my coffee, and I sit at the window and get some sunlight and hopefully some fresh air. And I have my coffee. I start doing my meditation. I listen to something, and not the entire time, not like 20 minutes, but a couple of times at least, I'll just kind of breathe in the smell of the coffee. And it's something that, my blood is 50% caffeine anyway. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
that's something I've learned over the years, over time, that helps. And so, again, yes, it's a grounding technique. So all of those are different coping mechanisms.
Mhm.
Um, Moving from there to healing.
Uh-huh.
So a coping mechanism, again, will help you kind of stabilize in the moment. And it may be something that you're doing, like grounding or meditation, to regularly keep your nervous system in balance,
Yeah.
to
Yes.
keep positive thoughts, all those things are all coping. So moving into healing, you got to go back and deal with whatever got you here in the first place. And that can sometimes be very scary. Um,
And we
PTSD,
refer to those
especially.
as what triggers?
No, a trigger is something that reminds you of what happened, of a previous
Okay.
event. But in healing, you've got to go back and face if it was childhood trauma, if it was adult trauma, um, if there are, if it's with anxiety, what what made what makes you anxious all the time. You know, are there, in other words, are there thoughts behind that? Um, so you,
Okay.
that's the first step of healing, is coming to that point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to dive in on this. Um, and a slow pace is a good pace. One step is forward is still a step forward. But that's the beginnings of the healing. From there, then you can start to move into the territory of emotional regulation, of, okay, now I know why I have these thoughts. Now I know why I have this in my body. And so now I want to move into emotional regulation, which is dealing with those things, dealing with those thoughts, those feelings, and which should be both mental and physical at that point. And that's where you're really going to begin to that journey of healing. Um, we've heard for many, many years, decades, that when it comes to mental illness, it's just, you either go get a pill and then you go to therapy, and that's the only way to deal with stuff. And something that has just blossomed, over the past few decades, is the truth, the reality that it's not just in your mind, it's also in your body. Um, and there's, you know, a give and take there. It's not separate. So that path to healing, you will really be like, magnified if you can get to that point to where, you know, talk therapy is great. It's definitely a piece of the puzzle, but so is self help and self care. And so is physical health, because everything works together. Physical health is mental health. Um,
Okay, so then what role does self-care play in trauma recovery, and how do you define self-care beyond the bubble baths and the surface level trends?
yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
beyond the surface level stuff,
Yeah.
it's going to be processing. So you're going to get to a point, and this is where one of the best ways that therapy can help you, because you can say, look, how do I get to this point? How do I get to self help and self care? And how do I learn to process this for myself? Um, so a lot of that is going to come from time you spend sitting still in some form. It might be meditation, it might be journaling, something like that, where you are intentional about, okay, I'm going to just sit with myself, maybe with some music on, whatever. And it can even be doing a mundane task. You can process it. Right? You're washing the dishes. You're doing whatever. Guys, you're out there working on the truck. Whatever you want to do, cutting the grass, anything. Take that time and think. Okay, what have I learned about this, and where have I come in this process?
You know
That's
what's
your
crazy? For me, I
self help.
actually developed like obsessive cleaning. That's like
Uh-huh.
my meditation. And like trying to
Yeah.
explain that to people is like, well, you're supposed to teach your kids to do this and this and this and this. But like, that's part of my meditation is cleaning the house. So I developed like extreme OCD because of that. Like everything's
Yes.
organized, clean. That's for me, that's my meditation. So
Yes.
yeah, I get that.
Absolutely. Yep. So anything you can do to take that time but you, you want to learn to be intentional about it. And
For
here's the
sure.
difference between processing and its evil twin, rumination. Rumination is the thoughts of the past, or the thoughts of self harm, self degradation. Nobody, I'm worthless. Nobody loves me. And those thoughts are just on autopilot. They just run in your
Ruminating.
mind,
Mhm.
and it's making you worse. You would think
Makes you go
that,
crazy.
yeah, absolutely. You would think, okay, if I think about this, I'll get over it, so to speak, but you don't. That's not what's happening. Your your brain, your subconscious is stuck. And so the intentional version of processing is I'm in control. This is something that is in my life, something that's part of me, but it's not the whole me. So I'm going to look at this, I'm going to observe it, I'm going to examine it. And you at some point should get to a point to where you lose the examination of asking why this happened, and move to the what am I doing now? And that goes from moving to the past to the present. And that's really what self-care is about. The other self-care is you definitely want to take care of yourself in terms of physical health, your exercise, your diet. You want to take care of yourself emotionally, like we said earlier, learn learn yourself, learn when you're at peace and you're not nearly as vulnerable to take on things that are going to harm that peace, are going to take away. You're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. It doesn't matter if you're on your healing journey the rest of your life, which you should always be growing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
emotionally,
Yep.
mentally. You're going to make mistakes. So but you will notice that you can bounce back from those mistakes quicker, and that you won't judge yourself like you used to. You'll be like, I see what happened here. I this person I met, we talked. It seemed like such a good relationship. And I noticed a couple of things that were maybe red flags and I kind of dismissed them. And now I see where that led to. So
Exactly.
you learn from it. You learn from it. So yeah,
You sure do.
that's that self-care when you get to that point to where you can be a student of
No longer
yourself.
let it happen to you. You need to
Right.
become aware. Like
Yeah.
you've been brought these red flags this entire time. Now it's time to collect them and be like, okay, I'm aware of this one and this one and this one. I'm gonna throw them out. Let's
Uh,
do this again and break those patterns, right?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, but you
Yeah,
have to know yourself first because
exactly.
there's 50 million
Because all
people.
these red flags brought you dictation. You
Yes.
should look like this. You should be this. You should eat this. You should wear
Uh,
this. And
oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
throw those away. Let's
Yeah.
find our new self bucket and
Yes.
start filling them with the green ones, right? Because
Yeah.
we're aware that this happened. Let's no longer carry those into our new self care bucket, right?
Yes, absolutely. And something I think that is common or can be common between healing from your past and in terms of relationships, if you can sit back and listen to yourself, how you talk to others, how you view social media, the things you engage in, the things you say, if you're always dependent upon the external, then you have a lot of healing to do because
Absolutely.
the external is always going to be there. It's always going to be. There's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad. But like me, for instance, my father was abusive growing up. I had to reach a point in my healing journey where I was willing to let that go. He was never going to be able to make up for that, even if he was apologetic or sorry, which he wasn't. But even if he was, he can't go back in time and fix all those things. And if he's not, which he wasn't, I still, for my peace, I have to reach a point where, you know what, I'm going to quit hating on this person. I still, say this, and this was wrong, and you shouldn't treat people this way. But am I am I being self-reflective about that, and am I putting that into practice for myself, or am I just wanting to, blame everything on someone else? Um, and that's a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow. That difference in reaching inner peace, um, but at the same time learning that that doesn't necessarily mean that you just forget everything. It just means you're no longer putting the control of your life in the hands of whatever that was, whatever
Exactly.
trauma, whatever person.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree. So tell me, what inspired you to write your health series, and how do you hope that it helps impact people, those who read it?
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. Therapeutic writing or journaling has been something that has literally, been the
That is
corner.
always at the top of everybody's list, you guys. Just
Yes,
being
it
journaling.
is. It's been the cornerstone of my healing process for many, many years. So I've always enjoyed it. And I kind of dabbled in writing a few times over the years, but uh, the main thing that led to this series was when I was doing my master's degree, and we had to write our thesis paper, and I wrote it, submitted it, and it was actually published as a scholarly paper by the college, and that kind of was like it was like one of those, whoa, really?
Dang.
Is that really
Wow.
happening? That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
I didn't even plan on that. And
Yeah. That's
but then it
awesome.
it got me thinking. I was like, you know what? I want to be able to help people. And so I've got 2 years worth of research and writing. I have, over 10 years work in practical experience in nonprofit where I've worked with everything you can imagine. Um, and then my own personal experience growing up. So I think I can take this information and kind of let's just write a book series on each of these issues and try to give people a little bit more information so that they have better understanding of what they're dealing with. And then I personally wanted to make it very practical to give people things that they could do, not just the um, motivational type speeches, which are important and they're great. And there's times you need those. There's times I need those still today.
Still to this day, yes.
Absolutely. I still
It's
listen
so
to them,
funny.
but I want to listen to that and be like, okay, yes, I can do this, but do what? I can do
Right.
this, but do what? So
Yeah.
I wanted to make the series, like I said, very practical, and that's what they are. So I hope that as people read them, the four that are out now, um,
Which
anxiety,
ones do you think that someone should start with? Which one? Which
it
book?
would depend on what they're struggling with. So there's one
Oh, okay.
just on managing anxiety, managing clinical depression, managing ADHD, and managing PTSD. So whatever you got going on, get that and just start. You'll have so much. I've talked to people and they've read like the first part, like the first couple of chapters where it goes into some of the history, some of the science, and I tried, it's not like way, doctorate level, data. It's down to earth, like here, this is what this is. But they read it and said, look, I've had this, I've been dealing with this problem for like, you know, 20 years and I didn't know some of this stuff. Especially with ADHD, people will be like,
Yeah.
I didn't know this. When I read this, I was like, oh, that's me. I've got that, I do that. So I hope that they get a better understanding and maybe that helps them feel a little bit normal. Like I'm not the only one that struggles with this, you know? And then as they go through the practical stuff, they can have coping mechanisms like we discussed earlier that will help them today and steps to take to long term healing.
Perfect. Amazing. And I will post all that information at the end of the show for everybody to go and grab. So, you've helped so many people find clarity and courage in their mental health journey. What's the most meaningful feedback you've ever received from a client or a reader?
Hmm. That's a good question. And I don't think about that much. And that's a trauma
I love that
response.
I'm asking these awesome
That's a,
questions.
yeah, that's a trauma response is that you tend to not look at the good qualities of yourself. You only look at the bad. So that's still obviously something I need to work on. So thank you for the
Okay.
exposure at this moment.
Oh, you're
um,
very welcome.
I'm
Glad I can help.
I'm I'm extremely open and honest about those things. I would say that um, probably the closest would be one of my best friends
Yeah,
um,
please share.
responding like I've actually heard him say, at different times, like, "Oh, I always looked up to you. Um, I remember when you helped me through this," and I'm getting emotional
You are? Let it
because
go.
it's I don't know. I think I most of us, I don't think we stop and think about how we've helped others because we tend to think, oh, well, I'm being selfish and I'm being narcissistic and prideful and blah, blah, blah. And no, there's a big difference in that. When
Yeah.
you're trumpeting that to the world, that's when you're being, prideful and narcissistic and selfish. But to just think back, um, and think about your wins, that's important. That's important. I'll add that to my list. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Good.
I would say that. And then I remember, experiences, especially working in the domestic violence field where I would do public educations. I would go out and speak and I would teach classes and things like that. And, many times had people come up to me and say, you know, we are so proud that there's a dude speaking out about
Yes,
these issues, that there's a man speaking out about these issues because we need it so badly.
we
And
do.
I always, that always made me feel good because even
I just
without,
feel like we're fighting with each other. Like it's just women versus women right now. And
yeah,
we're really, really, really looking for the guys to step up with us. Like we just feel
yes,
like we're all alone right now.
yep. And so
So
that's a very important thing. And that was something I was proud to be a part of.
you should be. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if you could leave one message for our listeners today, what would it be?
Um, that's a good one. Uh, so definitely understand that this isn't a platitude coming from someone that's been through it most of their life, but you're not alone. And that um, what you experience and what you feel is something that many, many other people experience and feel, even if it doesn't look like it on the outside. So you're not alone. Um, and that every step you take forward, even if you have to make yourself, you're going to reap the rewards from it later. Don't don't judge yourself because of time. We kind of mentioned that earlier, but think of like a garden. If you're planting seeds, those seeds you plant, they're tiny. They're so tiny, but yet they're going to grow into something big. And it takes time for them to grow into something big. You don't just plant the seed today and then tomorrow go out and pick a cucumber, tomato, watermelon, ear of corn. It
Yeah.
takes weeks, it takes months for those things to grow. Um, and the same with healing. It takes time. Expect that, and that's normal. You you're not a failure because you made a couple of steps and you did a few things and now you feel bad again, or you're having the same symptoms again. You're not failing. You're learning and you're growing. Just give it more time and just be consistent.
And it all starts with awareness.
Uh-huh.
Yes. What a powerful and deeply needed conversation. Jamie, thank you for sharing not just your expertise, but your heart and your lived experience. Your
Thank you very
voice
much.
is yeah, absolutely. Your voice is a reminder that healing is possible,
Uh-huh.
that we are never alone in our struggles, and that mental health recovery isn't just about getting by, it's about reclaiming who we truly are.
Yes.
To everyone listening today, whether you're navigating anxiety, trauma, depression, or just feeling lost, you're not broken. You are human. So please remember that. And there is help, hope, and healing available for you. If Jamie's message resonated with you, I encourage you to check out his Managing Mental Health series. His work is practical, powerful, and rooted in deep compassion. So get ready for that. Thank you for tuning in to the Deep Waves Transformation Podcast. Please share this episode with someone who needs it. Leave a review and tag me on social media. The more we normalize conversations around mental health, the more lives we can change. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, keep healing, and remember your story is not over yet. Have a blessed day, everyone. Thank you so much, Jamie. Take care.
Thank you.
For more information on where to find me, please visit deepwavescoaching.com and on my Facebook and Instagram page at Deepwaves Life Coaching. For more information on where to contact Jamie, please visit managingmentalhealth.net. Also, pick up a copy of the Managing Mental Health series covering anxiety, depression, PTSD, and adult ADHD. You can also learn more about his one-on-one life coaching and trauma-informed support on his website. Thank you so much for watching.